welcome everybody to the First Christian Church podcast. This is called FCC Talk, and we're kind of trying something new today. We are me and our worship minister, Dan Stribling. Oh, I don't have the names pulled up here. Show the display names. Boom, there we go. All right, John and Dan here with you at the FCC Talk podcast. So really, we want to just try and do something new here. We want to try to do something that is productive, but it's casual, it's uplifting, and it's kind of relational for you. You know, in our society, I've recognized that I kind of get to know people through podcasts, and it doesn't happen in person as much as it once did. So I know a lot of people listen to podcasts on their way into work. And so this is going to be kind of a longer form podcast. We have our sermons, obviously, that Chris does. We have the Truth Tuesday podcast, but this is going to be more of a longer form thing. And we're just really, really excited to do it. What do you think, Dan?
Well, you kind of scare me when you say that it's going to be relational, because I get worried that I'm going to slip up and, provide more information than people really want to hear.
Yeah.
About to find out more about us than you really want to know. But
not that relational, Dan.
Not that relational. All right, I'll try to keep a lid on it. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. Just an opportunity to talk and chat and, just sort of do some things off the cuff. It'll be pretty cool.
Yeah, so the way we're going to structure this is we're going to kind of have like 3 or 4 different articles that have come out recently that we felt like were kind of uplifting, and we're, again, kind of like I said, casual. Like, this isn't going to be an in-depth Bible study. We're not going to sit here and get out our commentaries, and get out every single Bible. I know, right? You came from the wrong reasons there.
I'll live.
But we want to try and do something where we're sharing information with you, sharing uplifting things that we find, and just kind of discuss them and what they mean in our lives. And who knows, maybe it'll be similar for you, maybe it will be something different, and you can kind of tell us about it. But if you see us on Sunday morning, if there was something you liked, something you didn't like, whatever, just a comment you have, please let us know, because we want this to be something for you all, and not just for us to do here at work. So
we're not looking for new things to do, by the way. We have plenty to do. We just love you guys.
Right. We just
trying to enrich your lives.
We want to be relational, but not too relational. Right, Dan? Yeah. So a lot of the stuff you hear us talk about are kind of like current event things. We're not going to get into politics. That is talked about way too often. And there's political radio and all kinds of podcasts you can listen to for that. We're not doing that.
Keep me out of that junk.
Yeah, exactly. But we will talk about like ministry insights, kind of what is going on in ministry, if there's any news with that. Like an article we have today is about a VBS at another church. So we're just going to kind of talk through VBS. And that's what I noticed. I don't talk about VBS with anybody really other than parents and volunteers. If you're not in VBS, you don't hear me talk about it a lot. And it's a really, really cool thing. So we're going to talk through some of that, just our personal lives, our personal, things that we've gone through, how they relate to the articles, different things like that. And then, like I said, some Bible, not really a whole lot of sermons or anything like that, not the in-depth stuff, but maybe share a Bible verse here and there. So Dan, what do you think about that? You ready to go?
Sounds good. Let's do it.
All right. Sounds good. So our first article, like I said, is about VBS. It comes from NPR News, and I have forgotten where this VBS was from, but
NPR talking about church stuff. This should be good.
Right, exactly. So I read through the article. It's actually a pretty well done article, and it's fun, talking about, like the very first line is hundreds of kids in matching teal blue t-shirts stream into Berean Baptist Church. Oh, it's in Minnesota, for vacation Bible school, and kind of talking about that. Dan, you run the music for our vacation Bible school. Kind of tell us, whoops, kicked my camera there. Kind of tell us, what has your experience with Vacation Bible School been, over the years, and when you got here too?
Well, over the years, my experience with VBS has been a little bit mixed. I haven't always been very deeply involved in VBS. In the earliest years, I actually didn't even touch the music. Most of what I did was teaching classes and kind of being a parent volunteer, which I think is a lot more common for the different volunteers that are involved. Doing the music is very specific, but the people with the real kind of boots on the ground type work that are putting in a lot of the long, hard hours and doing a lot of the work for VBS, guess what? They're the people, doing crafts, leading groups, sitting on the floor with the kids during the different sessions, all that kind of stuff. I did that stuff for a number of years before ever touching the music, which is kind of weird, right? Because I do music, but there was always somebody else to do it. So since being here, my main thing has been leading the music for the kids, which really is just all about bringing as much energy as possible, because we're trying to create, or I should say, I'm trying to create an environment where the kids get really excited to participate. And if the kids are really excited to participate, that's a great opportunity to lead them towards what it is we're participating in, which really at its core is worship of God. And so associate all those positive emotions, all those good feelings, all of that fun. We want that associated with worshiping God, because we want the kids to know that, hey, worshiping God is a good experience and it can be a lot of fun. And so that's been a lot of fun for me with our VBSs, is being able to kind of tackle that side of it and then unleash them on their different classes and all the stuff that they get to do. So yeah, it's VBS for me. I've never had a bad experience with a VBS. It's an incredibly positive thing. I love it.
Which I'm sure the kindergarten teachers just love that you use that word, unleash them to their teacher. Yeah, and the VBS music has kind of evolved over the years for
Quite a
us.
bit.
When I first got here, it was really just kind of the people dancing in the videos and doing it that way, which is fine, and it was fun. And then when did you do the first VBS here? Was it 2021?
It was 2021.
Yes,
and we did. That was the year of Make Waves.
Oh no, that was 2 years. That was was it? No, because this year
was stellar. Last year we did the orange one.
Last year was Make Waves.
Was it that Make Waves?
Yeah, 2021 was Focus. That's right. That was or Press Play. Press Play.
Press Play. We're going to Press Play. Yeah.
How could we forget? Yeah, that's the most cutest
that one
kids
hurt my shoulder pressing play so many times. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I remember that one. And this year, tell them what we did this year, Dan. What was the brand new thing? We moved the chairs out of the way. What was the new thing we did this year?
Yeah, we had our very first VBS mosh pit.
Yeah,
that was a lot of fun. It wasn't supposed to be a mosh pit. It just kind of turned into one, because once again, we have a lot of energy, right? But we did. Actually, I thought the idea to move the chairs back was really, really smart, because it kind of opened the floor in front of the stage for other activities like games and different things like that. But it also allowed us to bring the kids right up next to the stage for the worship time. Okay, which just really increased the excitement, increased the energy levels, all that, just kind of kicked it up to 11. And everybody had a really, really good time with it. It was cool for me because I literally got to be right next to the kids. Like, I'm on the stage, they're right down there in front of me. So we're high-fiving and fist bumping, and we're looking at each other's eyes. And it just kind of made everything, just up the level of everything. It was great.
So what you're saying is there will be a mosh pit on Sunday morning soon.
Maybe. Possibly.
If you come in and the first 5 rows of chairs are not there,
be afraid. Here. Be very afraid.
This is the kind of inside information you get on the FCC Talk.
We're gonna start doing some like hard rock worship mornings and stuff like that. We're standing.
You told me you liked that metal song the other day. That
"Fall on Your Knees" by Holy Name.
There you go.
It's a great song, man. It's a great song. We should totally do it for church. It'd be great.
That's what the people come to the podcast for, Dan, is your heavy metal Christian band song recommendation.
I got a few of them.
Yeah. I don't think we'll bring metal to VBS anytime soon. So.
Hey, they'd probably appreciate it. They'd go crazy.
Oh, yeah. The glow stick party was one thing. The next evolution of VBS is heavy metal.
There we go. Yeah. Glow sticks and windmill hair headbanging. Yeah. It'd be great.
Yeah. So the main thing I wanted to point out in this VBS article is, kind of what it says at the very top in the title. I'll read it again. It says, Vacation Bible Schools offer family-free, low-cost option for summer childcare. And, as much as I love the press,
okay. Summer childcare.
Right. You're right.
All right.
I kind of make a point in like almost every single children's ministry meeting I have, whether it's VBS, whether it's, just Sunday morning kids ministry, that like, hey, we are not childcare. We are so much more than that. We are a ministry. We are bringing these kids to God. They don't just come here so that way they can do a craft. They're here for so many more reasons than that. And just kind of try to help the volunteers understand that. And then I read this and I'm like, all right, well, I think I'm saying the right things because obviously, NPR News believes VBS summer childcare. What are your thoughts about summer childcare VBS, Dan?
From a couple of different angles. Okay. So first off, I could see the value for the busy, hurried parent to be able to get a couple of free hours, because I'll admit, we do at least 2 VBSs a summer with our kids, right? And one of those VBSs we don't actually help at. We just go and we drop the kids off, and oftentimes we'll go out to eat or go get some shopping done, or whatever. We get a couple of free hours, right? And so that is a nice thing, but we don't do it because we want a couple of free hours a night. We do it because our church has an excellent VBS. Other churches have excellent VBSs, and every single one of these things we can get the kids to. There's Bible learning, there's growing closer to God, there's worship, there's friendships. Like the fact that you're getting away from your kids for 2 hours seems to me like the lowest reason on the totem pole, but it wouldn't surprise me either. I mean, this is NPR, right? And so it's interesting that they would even have anything positive to say about a church function. And so it wouldn't surprise me at all that the only real value that they would see in VBS is, oh, drop your kids off for 2 hours. You know what I mean? But yeah, but it can be good. And if a parent needs a couple hours, sure, that's great. But the benefits of VBS are so much greater than just having a couple hours off. What happens in the heart of a child at VBS is invaluable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I was going to say was like, yes, if somebody came to me and said, hey, will you watch my kid for 2 or 3 hours in the summertime? I'd be like, sure, bring him to VBS. If you want to see it at childcare, great. I don't care. But, making sure that people, at least the people volunteering, understand like there is so much happening with a child when they come to VBS beyond just, the parents are getting a free 2 or 3 hours, to, what did you say, go out to eat or to
whatever, right?
get some
get some chores done, whatever.
Yeah, I did really like this quote at the end. We'll finish with this. I think it was the leader, the youth minister at the church.
You got to be careful letting those guys talk on record, by the way. Yeah. You got to be careful.
Yeah, CJ's trustworthy, but I've met a few, I'm just kidding. But he said this about VBS at their church. It's a little long, but it says, whether you're a small church of 20 people and you have 5 kids coming to VBS, or whether you're a church of 2,000 or 3,000 with 500 kids coming to VBS, you're all doing the same work. And that is reaching kids with the saving name of Jesus and letting them know that they're valued. And I love that quote there at the end, because that really is,
that's good,
the whole thing with VBS. It's not just childcare, which if that tells a parent to bring their kid, sure, if that's how you get them to bring them. But it's not just childcare. It's so much more than that. Letting them know they're valued, letting them know that Jesus cares about them, loves them, all that good stuff. So
absolutely, no, that's good stuff. He can talk on record. That guy's okay.
Right. As long as he keeps it that way. So
yeah.
All right. So our next article, Dan, that I found, this one a little bit better of a reading source, I guess you might say, is the Gospel Coalition. It is Hope for the Anxious College Freshman, and it's kind of like this open letter that this woman, Jane Story, is writing to, I presume, a female a college freshman. But it sparks some interest in my mind with all these freshmen going back to college. I have no idea how many college freshmen are going to listen to this, but if we have any, for you and I to just kind of talk through our experience of going to college as a freshman. I know what mine was, but just like that can be such a hard thing. So I guess as quick as you can, what was your experience kind of going to be a college freshman when you got out of high school, Dan?
Oh boy, I got to think back a little bit. I mean, really, my freshman year of college was actually one of the best years of my life. I had so much fun
Hmm.
that year. That was the year that I met my wife and we started dating and getting to know each other. Like there was all kinds of positive stuff that happened. My college freshman year. I did not have a bad experience, but I do remember the transitional time, like that summer. I remember pretty vividly that summer in between ending high school and then starting school. And there's a lot of questions, right? Because there's a lot of unknowns in that period of time. And I remember, what's my roommate going to be like? What if my car breaks down? I was about 11-hour drive away from home. So it wasn't like I could just hop in the car and go. I had to really dedicate some time to be able to take a trip back home. So there was a lot of those kind of concerns. Socially speaking, how's this thing going to work? You really don't know. You really don't know exactly what to expect. You got a lot of hopes. You have a lot of things you're looking forward to. There's a lot of cool stuff in the pipeline. But I would imagine too, for a lot of kids these days, there are unique things that I am sure kids these days are anxious about that never would have even entered into my thought process. We lived in an age before social media. Like if we'd have had social media, TikTok or Insta or any of these, then I could have gotten to know my roommate long before we ever even moved into the room. I could have checked out his socials, see what kind of pictures he was posting, seen what he was into. We don't have that now. And I think that is both a blessing and a curse, right?
Hmm.
But I think there's
Man,
just there. Yeah.
I remember when I first moved in at KCU, which that's where you went your freshman year, right?
Mm-hmm.
KCU,
Yeah, I
Kentucky
graduated from
Christian University.
KCU.
Yeah,
Yep.
and that was where we both first went. So 4 years strong the entire time there. But I remember when we first went there. Oh boy, 11 years ago. Whoo! But when I first went there 11 years ago,
22.
yeah, yeah. So you're double me.
Yeah.
But I remember they started a Facebook group, and it
Ah.
was interesting to say the least because you immediately kind of knew who was in your class and got to know people a little bit better. I remember, the guys I immediately kind of became friends with, they weren't active in the Facebook group at all. They were like, "This is I'm not doing this. This is weird," type of stuff. But I remember there was like it eventually turned into just like 4 or 5 people posting every day and basically just having conversation with each other.
Right. Right.
It was nice, but at the same time, not everybody utilized it
Just kind
the
of
same
kind of
way.
lame overall.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like it was like a good idea, but it was like even at that time, Facebook seemed kind of old to high schoolers and
Yeah, it didn't
college
take long for
freshmen.
the old people to ruin Facebook, and I was one of those old people ruining it. No
which
shame. No shame.
which I was always on Facebook when I had social media into my later uh, high school years and stuff like that. I used Facebook
Mhm.
and I think I used Instagram, so I was on there. I wasn't on there for those purposes of like groups and stuff like that. I guess
Right,
it was kind
right,
of like
right,
one of
right.
those things where you post a meme every now and then and your friends look at it, and then you go to church on Sunday and say, "Dude, did you see my meme?" Which, hey, people might still do that today. So who knows?
Hey, the
But
memes are still prevalent. The
yeah,
meme culture lives.
yeah, oh yeah, the memes. I don't think the memes are going away anytime soon. We'll have hologram memes at some point. When holograms become a thing, they'll find a way to make
It'll
hologram
just
memes.
be beamed directly to your brain at some point
Yeah,
in the future. It's just
you
you
won't have to
sitting at
look
your
at.
desk, and all of a sudden there's a cat looking at you.
Yeah,
Meow. I don't
there
know.
you go. Oh man. But I remember, one thing I remember about becoming a college freshman, Dan, and this was kind of like my story I wanted to get to was, when I was in high school, I was a bit of a loner. I wouldn't say I didn't have any friends, but I just kind of had a small group of friends and I didn't really stray outside of that group. It was more at church where I
Yeah.
really was kind of, I wouldn't say popular. That sounds, high school cliche-ish, but I was in high school. At
Maybe
church.
more socially established.
Sure. Yep, that's a nice way to put it. But at church, I had so many more friends. I felt so much more
Mhm,
comfortable there. And I remember like my dad drove me to KCU my
mhm.
very first day. And that's what a lot of this article is about, is anxiety and kind of like those first
Oh,
day
sure.
jitters.
Yeah.
But I remember going there and thinking to myself, like, I can either allow this anxiety to turn me into who I was in high school, or like who I was at my high school, or I can disregard this anxiety and say, I am going to be the person that I was at church. I'm going to make friends. I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to be kind of that, I wouldn't say crazy, but just that kind of energetic guy that I was known for being at church. And I'm going to really put myself out there and do that. And I remember, cuz like it was weird. They had all the freshmen go to like somebody's house for dinner, and
That's not awkward at all.
and like the mom who was doing dinner for us didn't know we were coming, so they didn't actually have dinner. Yeah, it was really
Whoops.
weird. It was like the school nurse. She
Oh my gosh.
her daughter was in our group, and she thought that they were just coming over
Oh,
to like
wow.
sit by the pool and hang out. She didn't realize it was like a dinner thing. So we get there and she's like, "Oh, see, what'd you guys have for dinner?" And we're like, "We're supposed to be eating here for that." And she's like, "Wait, what?" So that's a whole
Oh
other story.
no.
But I remember sitting in the back of that van, like it was like a standard 12 passenger church van, because they have those all over the place at KCU.
Yep. Yep.
But it was like a standard 12 passenger church van. I was sitting in the back row in the very corner, kind of like had my hands in my lap and wasn't really saying anything, wasn't really
Mhm.
getting involved in the conversation. And I remember thinking all this stuff through and just basically like in my mind telling myself, I am not going to be the kid I was in school. I am
Mhm.
not
Yeah,
going to
yeah,
be that
yeah.
person. I'm going to be fun. I'm going to be energetic. And, I just think with a lot of college freshmen, that's just kind of what you have to do. You just kind of have to force yourself into this
Mhm.
mentality that, like, this is who I want to be. This is what I want to do. And I'm going to go make it happen.
Right. Right.
Obviously I'm going to, pray, and I'm going to, rely on God. I'm going to see my worth in what he tells me, not what other people, but just that kind of mindset change to have the year, like you said, where you had a lot of fun, where you met all these awesome people and kind of did that. Did you have an experience like that at all, Dan?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, what you were talking about, I think, is a good lesson for life in general, because
Mhm.
anytime you have one of these opportunities where you kind of get thrust into a situation which is either new or unfamiliar or where you are not known, you actually, I mean, it's easy to have a lot of anxiety about it because we're worried about how we'll be judged and how we'll fit in. But at the same time, this is also an amazing opportunity to kind of grab the situation and maybe not make it what you want it to be, but to embrace it and get the most out of it. I actually learned this, and I'm going way back for this example because I was in high school when I learned this lesson. I was invited to be a part of something. I went to school in Illinois, and I was invited to be a part of something in Illinois called Boys State, which I'm not sure whoever's watching if you're familiar with it. I don't even remember exactly like the overarching organization that put it together. But basically what it was a few boys from like a bunch of Illinois high schools were selected. And by the time all was said and done, there was probably 1,000 of us. And we were sent to Southern Illinois University's main campus. And we were there for a week. And it was kind of like a camp sort of situation. But the interesting thing is it was set up to teach us about the system of government in America. And so the boys were broken up into different dormitories into cities, and then cities would each elect a mayor. And then you could also run for other offices like representative, or there was a Senate, all the way up to eventually one boy would be elected president for the week. And we would have campaigns and do all kinds of things and learned a bunch of neat stuff along the way. When I originally went to Boys State, I did not want to be there. I had a big audition for a theater production coming up the day after Boys State ended,
Oh my
right? And so I
gosh.
was thinking about that, and I did
Yeah.
not want to be at Boys State. But I remember getting there, and I'm young, man. I'm like 16, 17 years old. And
Yeah.
it just struck me while I was there. It's like, you know what? I'm here. I've got nothing else to do. I'm going to do this. And so kind of like what you were talking about your freshman weekend, where it's like, you know
Right.
what? I'm going to be the person I want to be. I just threw myself into the situation, and I was elected mayor of my town. And
Wow.
I made it all the way to the Senate, which was the second
Whoa.
highest level. I ran for president, but I didn't get the presidency.
You
You
can't win
know,
them all, Dan.
you can't win them all. But the thing was, I could have just sat in my dorm room, and it still would have ended at the same time. I still would have left. I still would have gone to my theater audition, which I bombed, by the way. I blew my audition. And so I ended up getting far more out of Boys State, which I didn't want to do, than my theater audition, which didn't get me anywhere. So I
Probably
think
because you were at Boys State, you didn't do well in the theater competition.
I was pretty tired.
Yeah.
I had to do it. I had to do a dance audition, and I was really tired. I didn't do well. But either way, I think it's just a valuable lesson in there. Whatever situation you find yourself in, whether you want to be there or whether you don't want to be there, you never know what can happen unless you really just grab the situation and make the most of it.
Right. And I think that is just a huge thing that we have to remember, especially when anxiety hits us, is, and I'm not disparaging, saying that, anxiety is just something you win in your mind and
Right.
willpower, because there are terrible cases of anxiety out there that you really do need a lot of extra help for. And if anybody's going through that, I really do encourage you to go getting some extra help through counseling or something like that, because it really does do wonders. But there are situations where we really do just need to kind of have willpower and strength of the mind to say, this is not going to be my situation. I'm not going to allow this to happen. I am going to do A, B, C, D, whatever I have to do in order to make this a good situation that I can thrive in, and that will be good for me, good for the people around me, and I can essentially serve God in. I talk about that with the kids in chapel sometimes.
Yep.
So yeah. All right.
We could go into a whole thing about mental health. I just want to say real quick before we change topics that really a lot of people worry about getting help because they're afraid it'll change you. Really what it does is it helps enable you to have the willpower to take advantage of the situation. So I'm like him. I'm like John. I would definitely encourage you, if you need that, go get it, because I'm a firm believer in its practicality.
100%. And it's not a weakness thing. It's not you are less of a person, like you said. Yeah, 100%. Sometimes you just need somebody to talk to, and there are well-trained professionals out there who would do a very good job of that. And just like how you go to the doctor when you have a hurt knee, or whatever else. That makes it sound small, but you get
talk to somebody first. Don't go straight on the meds. Sometimes doctors will talk to somebody first, because it'll work a lot better for you.
Yeah. And our church has, if this is anybody in the area listening to this who's connected to our church has a list of trusted mental health professionals, counselors, stuff like that, that we would love to put you in touch with. So anyway, I just feel like I have to say that every time we do.
Got to put that on there.
Make sure we do that. So, all right. Thank you, Dan. Let's see. Our last article, I guess we're going to look at, is actually from Barna. I love Barna.
I like Barna. Barna's good.
Fantastic. If you don't know what Barna is basically like stats site for ministry and church and Christians. I love looking at the stats in sports like football and stuff. So Barna's kind of like my, person stat place. So, but they put together an article. It was actually last month. It was a little bit older, but I thought it was just so good, we had to reference it. It is titled, "What Are People of No Faith Looking For in Faith Conversations?" And I thought this was a really, really interesting thing, because,
a good one.
As Christians, where does our witness start? Our witness starts with treating people well, but it doesn't stop there. We have to be willing to have some of those tougher conversations, talk about our faith and stuff, and kind of go through that stuff. But it can be a little intimidating. But some of the information shared here was, I felt like pretty encouraging, and I wanted us to take some time to look at it. So the one graph or whatever I wanted to reference, and I know you all can't see it on the video. I probably should have figured out a way of putting this on there, but it's
Notes for next time.
yeah, notes for yeah. We're just getting started, people. Okay, we'll do better next time. But the question was between each of the following pairs of statements, which one comes closer to your feelings about this person sharing their religious faith with you? And this was all based on people of no faith, people who identify non-religious, people who identify, not just non-Christian, but completely no faith, no religion, nothing. Maybe not atheists, maybe agnostic, but they don't have any faith. I want to say that faith in religion or anything like that. So the first option was I felt cared for. The second option was I felt imposed on. 36% said that they felt cared for. 33% said they felt imposed on. And that can seem kind of close and make us think like, oh, I don't know. But in reality, somebody sharing their faith had more of a positive reaction to people than it did a negative reaction, which I think is really...
That blows my mind that there would be that many people saying that they felt cared for.
Right.
Like that blows my mind. I would have thought that would be way slanted on the other way.
Right. Of course, there's, some, I think this comes out to 69% or something like that. So obviously there was 31% that remained neutral.
Just kind of in the middle. Yeah.
Right. But still, yeah, I'm with you. 36% they felt cared for. That's not what you hear in
that's
media.
A 1 in 3 shot. That's like get out there and share your faith right now type numbers, man.
Right. And the next one was I felt more positive toward Jesus Christ. Okay, that was obviously the positive one. The negative response was I felt more negative toward Jesus Christ. The positive response, I felt more positive toward Jesus Christ, was 30%. And the I felt more negative toward Jesus Christ was 23%.
No.
So again, people are having a bit more of a positive interaction toward Jesus when people share their faith.
That's awesome.
Yeah. All right. And then the third one, so there's 6 here. The third one, positive response, I felt heard, was 28%. Negative response, I felt unheard, so the exact opposite, 25%. So somebody hearing about somebody else's faith felt heard more often than they felt unheard. Now, again, that one, that comes out to barely above 50%. So still the neutral kind of one out there in the middle, but still, people feel more positive about being heard than unpositive. But here's where it gets me. All right, you ready for these 3, Dan? I'm going to kind of ruffle these off.
Hit me.
All 3 of those were much more, I wouldn't say much more, were more positive than negative, right?
Yeah, at least.
So this one, positive response. I wanted to hear more from the person, 26%. I wanted to not talk about this again, 35%.
Okay, that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. I felt closer to the person in question, so positive response, 25%. I felt less close to the person in question, 29%. And then the final one, this one's the real disparity. I wanted to know more about Jesus Christ, 23%. I did not want to know more about Jesus Christ, 43%. So those are probably the ones you would expect a little bit more, but it just kind of, felt weird that people felt cared for more, people felt more positive toward Jesus Christ, people felt more heard. And then when it's like, I want to get to know this person better, I want to be closer to this person, I want to hear more from this person, I want to hear more about Jesus Christ, it's like, nope, all negative.
Right, shut that stuff down. Right.
Exactly. That has kind of struck me. I wonder what your thoughts are on that, Dan.
Well, I mean, it's a very unique thing that happens. Like if we keep this sort of thing in perspective when it comes to sharing our faith with those, especially that are outside of the faith, right? Because what does the scripture say? The scripture says that who is the prince of this world, right? right? Everybody serves a master, whether you serve God or whether your life is controlled by the evil one. And I hate to say it, that's pretty blunt, but it's what the scripture says, right? Like
Right.
you're either with God or you're not. And so you got to figure that when you share your faith with a person who's outside of the church, the first thing that's going to happen is that evil influence that dictates that person's decision-making process and their sinful nature is going to start yelling in the side of their head that, hey, you need to reject this stuff. This is not what we want to hear. This is not good information. And yet, even as potentially the Spirit of God begins to call to that person as well. And so it's an extremely heavy topic of conversation for anybody, and it's not something that's generally spoken of in a very casual way. If you want to get an extreme reaction out of a person, even a person you've known for a really long time, bring up the subject of faith. It will always elicit a very, very powerful reaction because it's a thing that's very, very personal and cuts straight to the heart. I give kudos to all those people that shared their faith and were able to produce a reaction in the other person that said, I felt cared for, I felt heard. Man, that is just awesome when we can communicate our faith in those ways, because that's how we're going to speak to the heart. Because I really believe that when we talk to people about our faith, there's a few different ways to do this, but in a very general sense, you're doing spiritual warfare. You literally are talking to a friend, loved one, acquaintance, person who is under the direct umbrella of influence by the most evil form of power in the universe, right? So what you are doing is you're coming into direct combat with this incredibly evil influence in their life. So it doesn't surprise me at all that people would have these extremely negative reactions, especially after they walk away, because as soon as you're alone with your thoughts, all that stuff that you're normally used to hearing is going to come creeping back in. And really, that's part of the reason why it takes the work of the Holy Spirit to cut through all of that and get straight to that person's heart. We're just the messengers.
100%, 100%. And I did a Truth Tuesday, I don't know, about a month or two ago, on how, we can still be Christians, how we can still have faith despite the failures of Christianity in the past, and that was a really, really important Truth Tuesday for me, because I know even in college a little bit, I'd seen the failures of Christianity, and I've heard people talk about,
I've been a part of the failures of Christianity. Okay. I'm not perfect.
Exactly. None of us are
not even
perfect.
close.
But I had to remind myself so many times that, just because somebody, claims they're a Christian doesn't mean that everything they do is what a Christian should do, is what Jesus taught us to do.
Right.
People get it wrong. People are misguided. People, give into false teachings, whatever else. And we have to remember that, it's much more, how should I put this? It's much better to listen to an individual person talk about their faith and think about them through the words that they say themselves, and not what have Christians done in the past. This is a big thing right now in our society. Don't stereotype me. Don't stereotype me based on all of these things. But we don't want to stereotype Christians as well, because unfortunately, there's a lot of really loud ones out there of kind of hurt the reputation of Christians a little bit. But that's what I think in my mind, that, these people had a positive experience with one individual person, but there must be something going on in their mind that they heard about, or that they have talked to a friend about, that, whether it was true or sensationalized, whatever, that really just kind of left a mark on their brain that, one conversation might not change. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And that's kind of sad to think about. I'd love to say that, you can have one conversation with a friend who's an atheist and then they'll come to Christ. But anybody that I've ever met who is not in Christ, and you have to try and, teach them and win them towards Christ. I did another Truth Tuesday on this the other day. It takes a long
It's
time
a process,
to be that witness, to be that person that can really help them understand and know these things. Have you ever had a situation like that where you kind of worked on somebody for an extended amount of time, Dan?
Yep. I've got one I can think of that succeeded and one I can think of that failed.
Yeah.
And of course, I don't control the outcome. I
Right.
can only control what I contribute to the situation. But yes, I did have one situation where I had a friend and we were friends for a few years. And after about 3 years, he did eventually give his life to Christ. And I think that most of that was actually based more upon what he saw God doing in my life than anything that ever came out of my mouth. Like
Mhm.
really, that particular story was more about him seeing the work of God, because
Right.
oftentimes it's like, the whole blue pill, red pill analogy, right? Like
Yeah.
when you take the red pill, all of a sudden you can see the truth for what it is. You see the real world. And when you begin to see the hand of God in things, all of a sudden you can't not see the
Right.
hand of God in things. But my other friend, who I mean, I say I failed. I don't think I really failed because he has free will, and
Right.
God gave him free will, and he chose to reject it. Um, that one was very painful for me, but I. I could go into a lot of different avenues with this, but I will also say this: the situation with the friend that failed made me a stronger Christian,
Mhm.
because he was able to ask me questions that stumped me, that
Mhm.
caused me to have to go and do research. As a matter of fact, the reason I'm such an apologetics buff now is because of that friend who failed,
Wow.
because I had to go back and
Yeah.
answer questions and reframe things. And I'd go back and I'd come back and we'd have conversations. His particular problem was pride. His
Mm.
particular problem was pride. He was an incredibly, I mean, he is
And pride as
who
in like selfish, right?
self-pride. Yes,
Yeah.
he believed he was strong enough to deal with any situation, and he's the kind of person that I wish God had made me physically. Right? It's about 6'2", incredibly strong, very
Yeah.
very muscular, athletic, and just could never really wrap his head around the idea that he needed a savior.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So and God's probably still working on his heart. I mean, this has been a while. Okay. And
Right.
God likes to play the long game. All I'm saying is, yes, we are the messengers. We can't control the outcome, but God can even take these seemingly negative situations and use them to strengthen us. Our
Mhm.
call is to be faithful.
Right. Yeah, and that's huge. I think you made a really good point there about not seeing it as a failure on your part, that like, oh, you didn't talk to them enough, or that
Right. Right.
you didn't have the right magic
I
words
didn't
or something
hit
like
him
that.
hard enough with my Bible.
Exactly. Yeah, it is a sword. So, but don't look at it as a failure. Obviously, we want
Mhm.
to, motivate ourselves to get out there and to do those things. But at the end of the day, Scripture tells us it's God working on the person's heart, and it's
Right.
ultimately, we believe in free will. It's ultimately their choice. What are they
Absolutely.
going to do? And God will work on their hearts, and we can be the tool to help with that. And like you said, help ourselves sometimes too with our own growth as well. But sometimes people just make the decisions they make, and we can't put every single decision
Mhm.
somebody else makes on ourselves. Geez, if we did that in ministry, Dan,
Oh, man.
we'd be fired within 2 weeks.
Yeah. I mean, we it's all comes down to the spirit.
Yep.
And I've had to learn that the hard way over the years, because I've thought in the past, that I could logic people into the kingdom, right?
Hmm.
And you can't argue. I mean, I don't want to make the blanket statement, because there are a very small number of people, I think, a very small number of people who will come to faith through logic and reason. Okay.
Hmm.
But for
Right.
the vast majority of people, and I'm one of them, you cannot argue them into heaven.
Hmm.
Okay. God has to touch their heart.
Right.
Right. And we can't touch the heart. Only God can touch the heart. We're just laying the seeds and giving God a door to walk through.
Planting seeds. Yep.
I don't even think we're giving him the door. He's got the door. We've just
Oh,
been called upon to share the message. I don't.
100%.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the verse I have hanging here in my office, 1 John 4:12. We are the full expression of God's
Hmm.
love. So
Yep.
God's love will always be there, but He has
Which
called
for my
us
friend
to express it.
who came to Christ, that's what he saw.
Right.
He saw the expression of God's love in my life and went,
Hmm.
man, I want that. I want to
Right.
know that God. Right.
Right. Yeah. And sometimes it has a huge event in their life happening. I know we need to
Yep.
move on, but just a quick story of a friend I had when I was in high school. I had a friend that desperately needed Christ in his life. He had so many different avenues in his life. He could never pick where he wanted to go. He was kind of one of those guys that had a bunch of different friends, but didn't really know. He was kind of also a little flaky too.
Yeah.
Oh, I won't say what I was going to say. But I'll tell you later, Dan. I don't want to stereotype anybody after he's got done
Enough said.
stereotyping.
Enough said.
But anyway, he was this really good guy. He just kind of struggled with that self pride a little bit, like you talked
Yeah.
about.
Yeah.
And I always
Very
brought him to
human
church.
trait.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I always brought him to church, and he was a good friend of mine for 2 or 3 years in high school, and eventually we just went our separate ways. I went off to college at KCU. He kind of stayed home and got a job in the workforce there. But I remember, I think it was my senior year of college, or right after my senior year, one of the two. He got into a car wreck, and he is actually handicapped now. He has no feeling in his legs. He's completely paralyzed from the waist down, and he's in a wheelchair. And he came to Christ.
Yeah.
Like it was kind of like this big thing. And he kind of always goes back to, God saved me. God kept me alive for a reason, because like in his mind, I don't remember all the details of the crash, but in his mind, he was like, there was no way I should have lived through that. Like I should be dead. I should not be alive right now, but
Yeah.
God kept me alive for some sort of reason.
Right.
And I think his father had a big impact on that, because his father always went to church and kind of always wanted him to as well, right? But his parents were kind of separated, so I knew his when he lived with his mom was when he was near me, that kind of stuff. Anyway, I don't want to get into all his personal life, but
that's okay.
But you know what I'm saying? Like, it was kind of that big event in his life of nearly losing his life that made him realize, like, I need God, and God has me here for a reason. And it's kind of sad, but it's like when God literally crippled him is when he realized, I need God. And that's sad to think about. I don't want anybody to have to go through that, but at the same time, it's like it led him to God. And so he's gonna be dancing in eternity rather than someplace else, which is ultimately so much
and
better.
we don't. And I just want to kind of add to that a little bit, because I know similar stories, where people have experienced tragedy or injury or personal loss, and God has worked amazing things through that. I don't know necessarily if and I don't think you even meant to say it this way, but you kind of said it, that God crippled him. I wouldn't actually say that God did it. Sometimes as humans, I know what you mean, but I just want to point this out, because there might be some of us out there, because I used to think this way too. Like, well, why would God do this to me? Well, you know what? The truth of the reality is that we live in a broken world, and tragedy is going to happen. We see that theme spread throughout the scriptures. Christ himself said the rain falls on the just and the unjust. Everybody gets rained on. Bad stuff's going to happen. The amazing thing is God's ability to draw good out of a bad situation. It is unbelievable. And so when I look into this friend's situation, there's a very good chance that God may have acted in the situation to spare his life. For the purpose of creating this bridge to restoration, because he knew that he would be able to utilize this horrible situation in order to reconcile his child back to himself.
Right. And that's all I was trying to get at, was not necessarily, like you said, that God did it, but he used this situation, for his good, for the good of God. Right. So thanks for saying that, Dan. Yeah, I didn't mean to make it come across that way, but excellent thought there. So, all right. Well, those are our 3 topics. What we're also going to do with each one here, because like I said, we're going to have Dan one week. Next week, we'll have CJ. The week after that, we'll have Chris, and we'll kind of go in a rotation like that. So what I'm going to do with each of them, since I'm kind of the host here, I'm going to talk through a question with them. And I don't know, it might be uplifting to you. I don't know. You let us know if you like it or not. It was just an idea I had. But the question is, Dan, what you eating, what you watching, what you reading? So is there anything
Okay.
you're reading? You don't have to necessarily answer all three, but it's just, is there a certain, thing you're reading right now? It doesn't necessarily have to be ministry related. Is there something watching right now? Is there a recipe that you're
Yeah,
eating right
yeah.
now, or a restaurant you're eating at right now that, is kind of new to you that you could talk about?
Well, as far as the eating part, that's the easiest one, because for
Right.
the last couple of months, I've been absolutely addicted to those little meatball pizzas at Junior's Shack.
Oh,
I love those things because the meatballs there are just it's a heavenly experience. Like, if I could combine eating meatball pizza with worship at the same time, I would do it. And that's probably be about the closest to heaven on earth I think I could ever get. They're really, really good.
it's a good thing they're closed on Sundays, right, Dan? That way
They're
you're not
closed on
bringing.
Sundays. I'd be up there playing guitar, strumming the strings with a piece of pizza, gross. Aside from that, I'm not really watching anything
Yeah.
right now. Just old Simpsons reruns, because I can't find anything good and new on TV to watch anymore. So I just,
Yeah.
I'll occasionally
Throw
watch
on
some old,
Bart, throw on Homer, and see what happens.
and just, yeah, I mean, it's like TV comfort food, but only
Yeah.
before season 20.
Right.
You got to go back before the Disney acquisition, right? Which I don't even remember when that was. And what am I reading? What am I reading? Oh man. I mean, honestly, right now I've been reading through just like some old like Stephen King fiction.
Nice.
I really like some of his original stories. I don't, it's one of those things you got to be careful with, right? But he's one of those authors that I love the short stories. And so I've been reading back through his very first short story publication, which is Night Shift. And there's just some classics in there, and I really enjoy that. I love the ability of stories to kind of, how do I put this? Not really like overshadow reality, but they kind of put a lens on reality. When you're able to sort of inject yourself into a story, especially a short story, it can just kind of help put a different angle on the way you see the world around you. It might make you open to things you previously were overlooking. So he's one of those authors that just does that to me. I don't know why. It's part of his style.
I've never been much of a Stephen King reader.
I don't blame you. He's one of those guys, I would never recommend him to anybody. Like, oh man, you got to go check out this book by Stephen King. But it's just one of those things where it's like, for some reason, his particular style of written art, for the most part, that he's written some stinkers, man, like stuff that I haven't even finished. Go, oh man, I can't take that, or whatever.
Yeah.
But when he lands,
Yeah.
and it's really moving.
Yeah. And that's what I would, this isn't really the segment where we're, recommending anything. I guess if you want to try to, get an interest in something we're interested in, I guess you could, but
it's just a little window, I mean,
like we said, the relational part, so if you're at home and you are like a secret Stephen King fan and you don't know if anybody at church
closet King fan, man.
Hey, talk to Dan, because he's read them, he knows them, and he has a good time with them. So there you go. For me, I'm just gearing up for football season.
Right on.
Gearing up for football. I know you're not about that, Dan. So it's a wonder. We are so different.
There is something I love about football season. There's something I love about it. It's all the sales at Kroger on the chips. See, everybody benefits from football season. Okay,
get yourself some good Lay's, nice thing of dip.
Doritos.
There you go, Doritos. The cool Ranch or nacho cheese? Which one are you?
Nacho cheese all the way.
I love Cool Ranch.
Like the spicy nacho, man.
Yeah.
Oh,
I hated when they took away the Cool Ranch Dorito at Taco Bell. That was a sad day. Yeah. So no, but yeah, I'm just gearing up for football season, man. Ohio State Buckeyes, get ready to watch them. And my I guess I like the Indiana Hoosiers. So I know there's probably a few Boilermakers listening to this. Sorry. Sorry, you know that about me now. Just act like you didn't hear it. Okay. Yeah, you just press pause on this part or skip the 30-second button or whatever. But yeah, I'm gearing up for football season. Can't wait, and ready to watch some Buckeye wins, I hope. So
all right, man.
So yeah, very good.
I will look forward to listening to you talk about those.
Yeah, and you'll just zone out. You say, "Oh, John's talking football again." All right.
That's the game where they run around carrying the weird shaped ball, right?
The pigskin, right? It's
The
the pigskin.
pigskin. Is that the one where they hit the ball with the sticks through the hockey goals?
Yeah, no, it's the one where they throw the ball through the big yellow bars. Or I guess they kick it.
Makes me think of that Futurama episode where like the space aliens are learning to play baseball and one of them hits a home run. And he goes, "Oh, hooray! I made a score point." I'm that guy.
There you go. Yeah. Oh man. Well, before we finish up here, Dan, is there this is I guess kind of our 2 or 3 minutes of Bible in this where we just talk about the Bible stuff. Are there any Bible verses that have been kind of on your heart lately? Anything like that has been impacting you? And talk a little bit about that. Is there anything like that going on right now?
Well, honestly, the stuff that I've been thinking about the most, and it's probably fitting that I already mentioned it. I preached on it a couple of months ago, and I mentioned it just a little bit ago in our conversation with the state of the world. With the rain falling on the just and the unjust. That's been a huge theme for me lately, and I think it's because we've seen so many folks around us, and ourselves included, experiencing just some really kind of unfortunate circumstances. Man, I know for my family this year, we've had a couple of things happen that have been like super big downers, and some challenges and stuff to work through. And it just seems like those things are happening with greater intensity. But then Jesus comes along and he also says, "But take heart because I have overcome the world."
Right.
Okay. And so we have to keep things in perspective. And so if I had a scriptural thought, my thought really would be, basically just hang in there. Hang in there. I mean, God never guaranteed. He never guaranteed that it would be easier if we followed him. What he guaranteed is that we would never be alone.
Right.
Okay. And so, and that's part of the beautiful thing is knowing that, we always have companionship. We always have God to go to, but you know what? Sometimes stuff happens. Sometimes stuff just happens, but like we discussed, God can bring good out of it. Not only can he bring good, he likes to.
Right.
Like that's the thing. When you look at God and the way that he works, God loves drawing good out of a horrible situation. Some of the greatest tragedies in history have produced some of the greatest long-lasting positive contributions because of what God has been able to do.
Right.
So just, and he wants to do that on a, like your life can be a microcosm of that.
Right. Right. And, I think when you talk about that, I think about the storm that happened. What was it, about a month or just a few weeks ago or something like that cut out so many people's electricity.
Feels like a year ago, but it was only a few weeks,
Right. You had your electricity out for what? Like 3
about
or 4
4
days?
and a half days. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I couldn't imagine. Yeah. I remember
we lost a bunch of meat in the freezer, and it was terrible. Bad. It was bad.
I remember getting home that night because we were actually at Hannah's parents' house that day, because that was the day when we had to get the car because the engine decided it was going to die on our other one.
More bad luck, right?
Yeah. Well, this didn't even seem to compare to what some other people went through with their power going out. And man, when we drove home that night, when we drove home, it wasn't even that night because it was so dark we couldn't see anything. But when we drove home from there, what was it, a couple days later when it was light outside, seeing all the trees that were falling on people's houses. And dude, I remember there was this carport that is at this person's house that we pass by normally, and it had just been completely crunched up and blown across the road, and it was like in somebody else's yard. I was like, oh my goodness, thank God that it didn't hit that person's house. Carport could have just completely hit their house. But but I think of that stuff that
rough.
Man, it can just happen. I mean, we had a tornado warning around here just about a week ago or something like that, or I think it was last weekend, where that stuff happened. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. But hey, you had a friend that loaned you a generator for at least a couple
and I
days.
still got to give that friend his generator back. It's locked out back in my shed.
Well, trust me, I'm not bringing up the generator to get it back. Don't worry.
Fine, John, I'll bring you back your stuff.
But just know I don't have a pickup truck because I'm one of the only people that lives on my road that drives a little pill car. And doesn't have a pickup truck, so
gets you around.
you'll probably need to use your minivan at some point to bring it back to me.
Hey,
but
that's how we got it home.
yeah. So whenever you can, don't worry about it. But all right. Well, hey, I had a lot of fun with this, Dan. I hope you did too.
Yeah, it was a good time.
Like I said, if you were watching and you enjoyed this, please let us know. We don't want to keep doing this if nobody likes it, but we would like to keep doing something like this if you enjoy it. So if you listen to this and you liked it, catch us on Sunday morning. You can send us an email. Yeah. I'm J Rhoades at fccbrazil.org. Dan is D Stribling. You can also find them on the website at fccbrazil.org. So, let us know what you think. We'll have CJ next week. We'll have Chris the week after that. And if you really like it, might go live on YouTube and see.
That'd be fun.
See what we can do. So
get some conversations going.
We'll see what we can do. So anyway, thanks so much for watching, everybody. Dan, you have any final thoughts?
Nope. We're all good. It's been a good time.
All right. Thanks everybody for watching. Have a great day.
All right. See you guys.